Thank you so much, Lily, for that warm welcome to be here. And Jean-Baptiste, I mean, usually it's, jazz at Lincoln Center is such a great venue, but to be here today with all of you and Jean-Baptiste, and to Lily for hosting this, I really thank you. And to the goalkeepers for hosting this great conversation. As Lily mentioned, I just returned from a region that graphically illustrates the importance of the work that you are here to do here today and in the future. It reminds us that progress is very difficult to sustain. It's not linear. 18 years ago, I reported on the civil war that was declared a genocide by the world, by the UN, by the US in Darfur. Ethnic cleansing and violence against women, well, that has reignited today, starting in April. As you know, people in many parts of the world are living healthier, longer lives. But in other places like Sudan, another generation of children are now dying of malnutrition and facing the violence that has plagued their parents and indeed their grandparents. Thankfully, leaders across sectors know that this does not have to be the case. That is what the goalkeepers are all about. 4 of those leaders are about to join me here. Together, they represent the power of partnership between government and philanthropy that is saving lives. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to President William Ruto of Kenya. Mr. President, it's a great honor. Thank you. And we have Prime Minister Alexander de Croo of Belgium. Please welcome the leader of Belgium. Thank you.
Hello, how are you? Thank you, my friend. How are you? Thank you.
And of course, great honor for me is the change makers who brought us all here together and continue to do so, Bill Gates and Melinda French Gates. Thank you all. And thanks to Lily and Jean-Baptiste for waking us all up today. We don't have all that much time, and we have so much to cover: the world, the Sustainable Development Goals, how far we've come, how far we still have to go before we reach that critical point in 2030. So let me start with you, President Ruto. Several leaders at the General Assembly, as I've been following the debates here, have been focusing on the global South and how in many ways, first COVID, and then of course the war in Ukraine, has left some countries in the global South behind, that not enough attention is being focused on that. And on these critical sustainable development goals, in particular of maternal health, of child nutrition, vaccination, of things that we know work. So talk to me about that. I certainly, as we just were saying, I witnessed, among the people I met, they were among 400,000 refugees now coming across the border from Sudan to Chad, and there are another 600,000 just in the last few months who have come to other surrounding countries, Mali and others. What are your concerns about how much we still have to achieve in reaching that 2030 marker?
It is true that we are off track on the achievement of both SDGs and also climate action. And we came to the conclusion at our Africa Climate Summit that it is no longer possible to discuss development, SDGs, and climate separately, that these are one and the same. And if there is something we learned from the COVID, is that there is nobody who is safe. We can all be in trouble.
That's such an important point. Let me just bring in quickly Prime Minister de Croo. So your country is, of course, the host country of NATO. I've spent a lot of time there over the years, but particularly since the war started. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, is there too much focus on Ukraine, on the military conflict, as critical as that is, mm-hmm. to the future of the world, arguably, without enough attention to the global sustainable goals and to the global South?
Well, First of all, conflict is development in reverse. And it's always been the case, and we see it now. And that's why conflict prevention has always been the goal. That is why we have things like the European Union, United Nations, NATO. It's to do everything to prevent conflict, because what you lose during conflict is just time you can't make up, and we see it unfortunately again. I do not think that the conflict in Europe takes away our focus on the SDGs and on, for example, the importance of global health. And on our side, we've been working extremely well together with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, for example, in sharing our knowledge. In the COVID period, came out that my country has an incredible expertise in producing vaccines. We are a vaccine powerhouse. We produce for the whole world, but we've seen that the African continent is for 99% of their vaccines dependent on the rest of the world. We've been sharing that expertise now, and through a company called Universals. We have now agreements in Senegal, in Rwanda, in Kenya, in South Africa, with a goal to have 60% vaccine sufficiency of the African continent. We think that's crucial. And that's how we work, in partnership and sharing expertise and making the world more dependent one on another, but not just in one direction. So, on your question, yes, a lot of attention goes to the war, and unfortunately, that war leads to unrest in the rest of the world. But it has not taken away our focus on working together with our partners and, for example, with our Kenyan friends.
Melinda French Gates, let's talk about the role of women and maternal health and the critical nature of spending that is disproportionately not going to maternal health and child development and nutrition.
And we'll dig deeper on this topic in just a few minutes, but the reason we're highlighting maternal health this year at Goalkeepers is it's one of the things that is easily preventable, and yet it's a tragedy to have 800 moms die in childbirth every single day. By the time we're done with this panel, 10 more moms will have died. So the investments that President Ruto, for instance, is making in the Kenyan healthcare system to make sure that the right things happen for moms and babies, that's what's going to keep us on track on these sustainable development goals. The world made huge progress on these goals before COVID, but COVID ravaged the health systems. And so we have to keep investing in moms because they're center of the family, and in their health because their health leads to the well-being of the family.
Bill Gates. In 2015, the sustainable goals were to eliminate poverty and hunger and have clean water, clean air. Too ambitious by 2030? I know no one could have predicted COVID, but now we have to live with the fact that pandemics are going to recur.
Well, the SDGs built on the incredible success of the MDGs. So from 2000 to 2015, no wars, no pandemics, a fairly benign financial situation. At the start of that period, Gavi is created to buy vaccines for all the world's children, Global Fund to provide treatments for TB, malaria, and HIV. And so it was incredibly successful. And so the goals for 2030, the next round, the SDGs, were set very ambitiously. And there have been these setbacks. The economic situation, we have some instability in Africa as well as the war in Ukraine. And so, we're very numeric, we're very honest about where we're off target. We see some countries continuing to make very good progress. Those are exemplars. And we always have the power of innovation. A lot of what people will be seeing today are new innovations that let us, with very little money, actually save more lives. So I remain, optimistic and committed. And as the Prime Minister said, Europe remains the most generous donor for these issues. But, money is short. Climate wants money, Ukraine war, so many causes. And so we really do have to recommit to the SDGs and pick the things where we get the best impact for the finite money that's available.
Well, let's talk about that. I want to get both leaders on that. Prime Minister, you wanted to comment, and then President.
Yeah, I think, if you look at the global agenda, yes, we're off track, and we should say it and point it out. But the SDGs are still by far the most important human development agenda, and it's good that it's there. I mean, we're not on track, but it's good that it's there, and let's please not throw it away. And then on some dimensions, I think, Bill, you talked about some countries which were actually on track. On some dimensions, we've seen progress which is really, really important. I mean, on water and sanitation, progress is really there, and the impact of that can never be overestimated. And on some of them, these are what I would call seeds we plant with impact on the long term. If you look at education, today 85% of the kids in the world have access to primary education. This is an incredible progress. And the impact of that, you do not see it today, but we will see it in 10, 50 years' time. So I think we're not fully on track, but on some dimensions, I am rather optimistic. And it should only encourage us to keep investing in it, knowing that it is hard work. And it is, I mean, we as a country love to work together with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. You bring to us that power of innovation. That is something that governments are not very good at, and you stimulate it with that, being focused on certain things, on eradication of polio, we work together on eradication of sleeping sickness. All that is great. What we need to do is work on the system. Healthcare systems, education systems. I mean, that is something that is in our power. And I have to say, if I say we need to step it up, it's all of us. I mean, it's organizations like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundations, it's governments, and it's the private sector as well. And that's how we will get there, by forming coalitions and keeping the ambition high.
And President Ruto, you have made so much progress in your leadership. Talk to us about from your perspective, what more we can do, philanthropy, other governments, in helping accelerate the progress.
I think our position has been, we've had too much focus on the problem rather than on what possibilities there exist for us to craft innovative, creative ways of getting to the solution. We have challenges, correct, of resources, both for SDGs and for climate. But many countries, many low-income countries are constrained by debt. And because of debt distress, and we talk about debt distress, 10 countries are already over the cliff in debt distress. About another 52 are highly at risk of debt distress. We are making the proposal that if we have at all to have the chance to be on track on both climate and SDGs, we need to support these countries, extend their tenure of sovereign debt, and give them a grace period. That's how they are going to have the possible chance to leverage resources for them to provide resources for development, for SDGs, and for climate action. Secondly, we need to rethink the whole architecture around financing. I think it is defeatist for us to assume that there is nothing we can do about the current financial crisis that is facing our globe. That's why we are proposing that it is possible for us to reform the international financial architecture, the international financial institutions, for them to provide additional concessional financing for us the same way we got together and found money using SDRs for COVID. We can also find money using SDRs for climate, so that we can deal with the possibilities of making sure that resources are found. And finally, let me say this, that we are innovative. There is a lot of innovation around technology. The current financial system was figured out in 1945. Are we saying in the 21st century we cannot figure out a financial architecture that is sensitive to the current situation where we have vagaries of climate, where we have challenges of development, and where many countries are actually in huge debt. I say differently, we can figure out a different financial architecture that serves the purposes of our moment. And it is the reason why, working with Bill Gates Foundation in Kenya, we are reconfiguring how do we deliver health. In fact, we're changing from curative to promotive and preventive. And on Monday next week, we will be launching our community health promoters, where in every community, every 100 households will have a community health promoter equipped so that we can promote health from the bottom going up.
Well, let me build on that for a moment. Just hold that thought, because Melinda French Gates, that is so critical to what is your passion, which is from the grassroots up, maternal health, nutrition, childcare, to grow this next generation.
Right. And we're seeing presidents and prime ministers, they see the value of women in their society, and they know that if women are well and healthy, then the family is wealthier, and the kids get educated. President Ruto's exactly right. We have to do more on this restructuring the debt so that countries can rebuild their health systems while they deal with climate shocks. One of the most exciting things, I've seen many exciting things across the continent of Africa, but one is just the ingenuity of people, and also, young people. So if you ask a parent in Africa what their hopes and dreams are, I have never had a parent not say, my son or my daughter going to school. Never. They all are investing in their kids because they want a better life. And so even when I was in Tanzania, if I look back a decade ago, I met with a women's group where they were saving $1 a day, $2 a day. Our phone lets us do that. And what were the women investing in? They were investing in new crops and eggs. They're now, I just learned, selling them to a market that is an hour away. They're getting more income, and they're putting their kids in schools. So when we get, as he says, the global architecture right, and we refinance these countries, they're going to thrive and grow. And guess what? That's good for the global economy.
And Bill Gates, I want to bring up the gridlock that we now face in some of our institutions, because that is the backdrop to a lot of what the American contribution is. And I know that USAID and the United States writ large are doing more, for instance, for refugees and for healthcare than many other countries. However, and they're adding more money just in the last 2 days. However, we've got PEPFAR, which was for 20 years the best example of how the public and private sector could work together and have a Republican president and Democratic Congress working together in a bipartisan way. Just last weekend in the Washington Post, there was a column by our former president, George W. Bush, on this program which Bono embraced and promoted, and they worked on this together across the aisle. And now the reauthorization, which is required in our system, has not happened. And after saving 25 million lives in Africa, credibly reported, by dealing with HIV/AIDS and other diseases, this is not going to be possible any longer. What is the cost of political gridlock in some of our Western countries? And to be fair, countries around the world.
Yeah, so U.S. aid in absolute is the highest. It's not at the same percentage of the economy as in Europe, but it's still very significant at over $30 billion a year. About a quarter of that is a combination of the PEPFAR and Global Fund contributions, which, as you say, have saved tens of millions of lives. We celebrated with President Bush just a few months ago the 20th anniversary of PEPFAR and talked about what a great program it is. Also, if you look at African countries' attitudes towards the U.S., they're very thankful for what PEPFAR has done. So the idea that that program would not continue is quite scary. We don't have a cure for HIV, so the people whose lives have been saved, if they aren't getting their medicines on an ongoing basis, then they'll have active AIDS and they won't survive. So it's a shame that at least temporarily this is caught up in sort of a, does the U.S. reach out to the world and help the world, and some of those controversies. I think we'll overcome that because the U.S. has a lot to be proud on this one. But we're not back in that heyday, you know, where Gavi and Global Fund were created. Our attention should get back to these very human-driven, you know, saving mothers' lives type work, despite our political differences.
Prime Minister Croo, I wanted to ask you about climate. This has been the hottest year in human history, according to any record. And we see what's happening with wildfires and floods and exacerbating, you know, the human tragedy, now a refugee crisis. And there is criticism that the refugees from Ukraine are being treated more preferentially by the United States and some other countries than refugees from the global south. Can you deal with that? How do we equalize the treatment and give people the care that they need?
I can only talk for my own country, and there it's definitely not the case. We've never had more refugees than we welcome in Belgium than today. Never, ever. And we do so, and because that's humanity. I mean, that's what we need to do. If people are fleeing their country because of conflict, because of oppression, or because of climate, we need to help them. We are under incredible pressure. A lot of European countries are. The solution is to stop that cruel lottery we see today in the Mediterranean Sea, where people are being pushed by human traffickers to just play on luck. I mean, will I get through the sea? I will have a life, and if I don't, I die. That human lottery is something which is unacceptable and which we need to organize in a better way. Now, it's hard. It's hard because public opinion is difficult in moments like this when we're under pressure and where there's a lot of instability, and that links also to the discussion on climate change, which is becoming more and more a debate and which is being questioned by part of the public opinion. Wrong, but okay, that's what we have to deal with. Still, if you look at the direction, and of course we've seen the wildfires and we've seen the extreme temperatures, but if you see the direction we're going, if we see the vast amount of investment that is taking place in sustainability and especially in sustainable energy, I am moderately optimistic. And there is a lot of analysis that says that 2025 will be peak CO2, which means after 2025, the world will, for the first time, start reducing the emissions of CO2. This is a major achievement. And I'm not saying this to say, okay, we're off the hook now, but it shows that incredible amounts of things are happening, and we see it throughout the United States. I mean, we're obviously happy that the United States has moved to the right side of the table with investing through IRA in sustainability and so on, and it shows what we are capable of if we work together and if we have the right goal. We're off track, but we're on the same direction, and we should keep it. And to turn it back to the conflicts we see throughout the world, in part of those conflicts is because that certain countries see the fact that we're going in the right direction as something which is threatening, which it's making us less dependent on fossil fuel, for example. I think that's a good thing. Not everyone agrees on that. So we need to just make sure that we keep the focus and we keep continuing in that direction. And it's a difficult message because what we see is temperatures we've never seen and so on, but below that, the impulse, the direction we're going is the right direction and should only motivate us to do more and speed it up and show the impact that it can have.
And it's now becoming, the markets are going to drive that as well, and that's why we're seeing the improvement with what's happening in the auto industry and in the oil industry, the fossil fuel industry. We have had a robust, energetic conversation ending on an optimistic note, because I think our time has sadly expired. But I want to thank principally Melinda French Gates and Bill Gates and the goalkeepers for bringing us together today, and of course His Excellency President Ruto and His Excellency Prime Minister de Croo of Belgium, to have leaders involved. This is the partnership between philanthropy and government. The private sector and the media has a role to play in keeping the attention focused on what is working as well as what is not. So thank you all so very much for letting me be part of this. I appreciate it.
Thank you.